call this asking what to wear.
I never know about these things.
As if Martin Patriquin ever dresses up.
No, what is it usually that you're wearing? That same, you got the uniform, right?
I have a series of 3 shirts that I wear. And,
okay.
They were all bought at a janitor warehouse place.
Keeping them in business?
I hope so. Yeah.
Cool.
I'm gonna pop some tags. Got $20 in my pocket.
A Canadian flag here. There you go.
This is going to be heavily edited, by the way.
Election morning. It is voting day. Thanks for joining us for Cult Montreal. We're going to have a little election recap chat about the campaign with PJ Fournier, Martin Patriquin, political analyst. Thanks for joining us this morning. So voting day, I guess the first question, maybe to Martin.
Yep.
What were some of the standouts if we look back over the last few weeks?
I liked how quick it was. We have quick elections compared to the United States, and this was very, very quick. As far as standouts are concerned, it was a very, very average campaign for me. There wasn't, we can talk about it later. It was 2019 all over again. It was essentially same kind of talking points, same kind of fear mongering, same attempts at fear mongering. And we're basically getting into the same sort of funnel that we were in 2019. That is to say, don't vote your conscience if you vote for anybody other than the Liberals or the Conservatives, because if you do, the other guy's going to win.
Yeah, déjà vu. And of course, the whole secularism debate and language debate finds its way into the campaign again, right?
For sure. And that was one of the interesting things. And that's what it's going to be interesting for me to watch when we see the results. That question that we're talking about, the question at the beginning of the English debate, loaded question to Yves-François Blanchet was basically, I'm going to mix my metaphors now. It was a softball, literally lobbed to this man, 25 years, that sent him back 25 years. He was able to campaign on exactly what he wanted to. That is the English guys have nothing but disdain for French people. And we are going to capitalize on that in votes. And you did see an uptick for them in the polls.
And, well, actually, PJ, what are the numbers showing?
Well, the English debate was on Thursday night, and right that weekend we saw the Bloc Quebecois going from an average of 25 to 26% to 30%, and so the effect was almost instantaneous. But also, I discussed this with many journalists and many commentators that were asking, perhaps we're seeing a block wave, perhaps we're seeing something like Jack Layton 10 years ago. And I told them, well, Bill 21 and Quebec Identity and Quebec versus Canada was far more central in the 2019 campaign than it was in this campaign. And so perhaps it will help the Bloc go back to its level, but I see they have a ceiling, and clearly the numbers bear that out.
Who does that risk benefiting then? The Conservatives, or how is bigger picture the Bloc going up, maybe getting a little bump in the getting a couple of more seats? Like who ultimately does that benefit?
Bloc going from 25% to 30% really hurts the Conservative in Quebec, because they were hoping to make some gains. They were looking at Trois-Rivières, they were looking at the rest of the Quebec City area, Saguenay-Lac-Saint-Jean, some eastern townships perhaps. They were looking at to make gains, not dramatic gains in the province, but they were looking at gains, and that is over. But if the Bloc Québécois gets over 30%, if they go to 31, 32, 33, then it starts hurting the Liberals. So the Conservatives, if they form government, which is possible at this point. I mean, I know a lot of people look at the numbers and they're showing their partisan side. They say, okay, the Liberals are back up. We had a scare; they're going to win. I'm not saying that at all. They are the favorite, but sometimes the favorite loses, and that happens. It's not shocking. I mean, the Habs were not the favorite against Vegas in the spring, and they won. So I don't want to talk about Trump and Clinton, but the odds right now show that the Conservatives could win. They would need to pull some upsets, but it would not be a dramatic once-in-a-century upset that the Conservatives would win. And they would only have maybe 10 or 12 MPs from Quebec, whereas they were hoping for somewhere between 15 and 20. So that's what I would say about that.
Talk about that. Like, what in your view are the pathways to that potentially happening? And specifically, what I'm kind of interested in is, how does voter apathy play into it this time around? It seems like a lot of people might not show up at the polls.
Oh, that's going to be, if that happens, if we have a low turnout, watch for the NDP to go from projections around 35 to 40 seats to not even what they had 2 years ago. It's going to hurt the NDP. The NDP is first or tied for first place among young people. Usually when the voter turnout is low, it's because young people don't turn out to vote. That's what happened in 2011. And it will really hurt the NDP in Ontario and in BC. The Bloc Quebecois, well, it's funny because the Bloc Quebecois demographics changed, or rather it did not change. Right now, the Bloc Quebecois is first among old people in Quebec, and it used to be the younger people that were more Bloc Québécois and the Parti Québécois as well. So that's why I'm saying the Bloc Québécois will probably either match its polling number or perform its polling number because it's mostly old people that support it. So yeah.
Just on the liberal side of it, why the liberals that I talked to at the beginning of the campaign, the Trudeau government has basically put itself in line with Francois Legault. Nobody wants to go against Francois Legault. Everybody wants to do what Francois Legault wants them to do. And that was a political calculation, and that's exactly what they did on language, on like what else? Funding, potential funding for the troisième lien in Quebec City, that kind of thing. What the liberals that I spoke to at the beginning of the campaign were worried about was their base staying home. Exactly that, Paul. And that really making a difference in a lot of the ridings where they're competing with the Bloc Quebecois. And it's not nothing, because I looked at some of the numbers at 338, a lovely website, by the way.
Thank you.
In which I counted 9, and there's probably more, but I counted 9 where we are. Well, I counted over a dozen where we were within the margin of error, and I counted 9 that were within a point or less. Those are crazy numbers, and that's where, look, if what the liberals worry about in Quebec is true, and that the base stays home on account of what Trudeau did with Legault, that spells trouble for the Trudeau liberals for sure.
But they do have a strong get out the vote machine, and I would not underestimate it. They were almost surgical in 2019, targeting the right riding and the right voters and winning all the close races. Some say they got lucky, and luck is certainly part of it, but their machine is much better oiled than other parties.
Yeah, for sure. And it was the same in 2015. I mean, you could, not the whole spiel that Trudeau goes on about, hope and hard work, knock on doors, et cetera, et cetera. That hasn't changed a bit for the party. You have a little bit of the situation where, as it used to be for the Liberal Party of Quebec, English voters, allophone voters are a captive audience. They don't have anybody else to vote for, and that remains true. The only thing, as I wonder, is it enough to keep people sitting at home, to stay at home and not go out and vote? And again, it wouldn't make a huge difference if we're talking about massive margins. But as I said, there's like a whack of ridings where it's really, really close to the Bloc Quebecois.
Can I ask you guys a question about that whole Legault endorsement? We saw, what was it, last week, kind of unusual, basically being pretty blunt about what he was hoping for. That move, how much of an impact do you think it's going to have ultimately? Because I think, PJ, like it seems like it's backfired a little bit for the Conservatives, right? Do people not want to be told what to do? Is it linked somehow to Legault's popularity? What's happening there, do you think?
Well, I think we have to be careful with cause and effect in polls, but surely it was major news that the Premier of Quebec would come out like this and easily. I mean, if a Liberal Premier would endorse the Liberal Prime Minister, we would just shrug. But this was certainly surprising. But we have to remember that this was the Thursday of the English debate, so which had the bigger effect. I don't think many English Canadians knew that Legault had endorsed O'Toole. I know when I wrote on this on Maclean's, and people were asking, really? Did he really say that? I was like, yeah, he did. And when we look at the numbers in Quebec after Legault's endorsement, we see that the Bloc goes up and the Conservatives slightly go down. Perhaps it was maybe just statistical noise, but when I say when you see in a poll a party go down 2 points, it's noise. But when you see the average of polling go down 2 points, it's not noise, it's significant. And so the Conservatives were on the verge of 20% in Quebec, and I think they're back to 18%. So they did have an effect, perhaps, but perhaps people figured, you know what, screw the Conservatives, we're voting Bloc.
We have to talk about Bill 21, of course.
We have to? Do we have to?
Well, that's the question, essentially. Have any party leaders benefited at all from the controversy, and how did the controversy, surrounding the question from the English consortium debate that arose out of that, how has it affected the campaign?
Martin, you go ahead.
It's hard to. It really. I hate saying this as a pundit talking, saying how it's hard to say. How these things get sort of put into this almost like a force field where this sort of mass unreality comes about and things get blown out of proportion and that kind of thing. Did it push people over to the Bloc Quebecois a little bit? I'm sure it probably did. Most of it is simple name recognition. You start at the beginning. You ask this debate. You pigeonhole the Bloc Quebecois leader and give him 2.5 minutes to tee off on a dumb question, or what was not a very well worded question, I guess. Mm-hmm. Sure, you're going to get a bump. Again, it's like what I said before. That kind of thing would have been absolute political suicide for any other party 25 years ago. The fact that it wasn't as big a deal says a lot to me about the state of politics in Quebec. Those voters, as Phil said, those that tend to be older in the Bloc Québécois, this might mean that they go out and vote, or are more likely to actually get up and vote because they're angry or what have you. But there wasn't nearly, as I said, the effect that I think that everybody was sort of saying about it.
Any final predictions or anything that could really come out of left field and surprise us tomorrow? What are your predictions?
Something I like to remind my readers is polls do not predict the future. They describe the very recent past. And that's something that we have to remember. Sometimes people change their minds. Human beings are far more complicated than electrons or galaxies. And so the data that we have right now, and usually at the federal level, the data is really good. Sometimes the data misses the mark in provincial elections. It happens. It's not the norm, it's the exception. But in federal elections, in this century at least, there has been no major polling error. But right now it's so close that it hinges on the voter turnout, and you gotta give the Liberals a slight advantage in there. So the most likely scenario, Liberal minority, as Martin said, it's a status quo election. But I could see the Liberals being very close to a majority. Perhaps not 170, but they need 170 for a majority. But what if they win 165? Then what? It would be just as good as a majority, because then all the parties would have to get together and agree to take down the Liberals. And that would take an extraordinary measure. So it would take a major scandal. So that's possible. And the other possibility is that the Liberal vote is depressed. It doesn't get out. The Conservatives are always motivated. And then we have a deadlock. The Liberals and the Conservatives almost tied in the seats count, and the NDP and the Bloc Québécois are kingmakers. That's also possible. And then we do this all over again next year. I don't know.
We can make another podcast. Amazing.
Could.
Yeah, there you go.
Absolutely.
One podcast a year here. Thanks, guys. It all hinges on voter turnouts, and let me get my Canadian flag, try to inspire some. Thanks, guys. Martin Patriquin, PJ Fournier. Thanks for joining us this morning. Voting day.